Blessings in the Son of God from the kingdom of the Son of God in the beautiful San Gabriel Valley in sun-drenched Southern California. You know, Jesus said that as scribes of the kingdom, we have to dig for treasures new and old. And, I think of the Old Testament, when I think of what he mentions by old, right? And Jesus probably meant things ancient and things new, right? Things that were happening at the time and things that would be in the future. So when we go back to 2 Samuel 7 and chapter 24, I'm going through, 1 Samuel, I'm sorry. I'm going through the book of 1 Samuel, and I'm up to chapter 24 because I made a commitment to get back to the Old Testament, because that's where I tell people you really find a lot of the treasures. The New Testament's beautiful, smaller though, so oftentimes, you find yourself going through it, many times, and you've read it before, still get a lot of great things out of it, but the Old Testament is where you find a lot of these treasures. In reading 2 Samuel 24, now, I always talk about the Davidic covenant and the Davidic kingship of Christ, and these titles like Lord, Son of God, and Christ that are used continually of Jesus throughout the New Testament are rooted in that covenant. And it's awesome in chapter 24, which I haven't even finished. I've just gone through like the first half of it because I'm focusing on, a lot of times in the churches, they talk about David's situation with Saul in the cave and how he had the opportunity to kill Saul because Saul was pursuing him. David was the rightful king. However, he respected that Saul still held the physical throne and the official position of king of Israel, right? But what's noteworthy is after David leaves the cave and then he approaches Saul and tells Saul, basically, I could have killed you, but I didn't. That shows you I have no evil in my heart towards you. But what I want to key on is that what David refers Saul to as. David refers to Saul as my Lord and Jehovah's anointed. My Lord and Jehovah's anointed. And even refers to him as my Lord the King. Now, he refers to Jehovah's anointed a few times in this passage. He refers to him, my Lord the King. Now, those are titles that Jesus is referred to as in the New Testament. The most common ones, my Lord, the Christ, obviously Son of God. My Lord, the Christ, a few times King. Lord is really essentially the same thing. They mostly don't identify these titles as Davidic kingship titles, or in Saul's case, just kingship titles. Saul's not a Davidic king. He's of the tribe of Benjamin. And because of not identifying these titles as Davidic or as kingship titles, a lot of people believe in kind of how should I say this, because I want to be charitable. They believe in a Jesus that has been mythologized rather than the Jesus that has his roots as an Israelite, as a Davidic royal son. And that the titles he has, such as Lord, are not titles that equal Jehovah. It's not the Lord like capital L-O-R-D in the Old Testament, right? Because a lot of people, when they read Lord in the New Testament, that's what they're thinking about Jesus. But Lord for Jesus in the New Testament just simply refers to his kingship, his Davidic kingship. Also, the title of anointed, which was a title. Anointed means Christ, Messiah. And what Christians have done is they've made this title of Christ this kind of, they've made that title as if it means God. And that Jesus, no. And they act like Christ is an exclusive Jesus title, and now it is, right? But Christ is simply a title of kingship. The anointed, it could refer to a priest. But when it's used of Jesus, it's explicitly about his kingship, which includes his priesthood, because he's a Melchizedek high priest, which is part of the Davidic covenant. And Melchizedek means king of righteousness. So this title of Christ and Lord applied to Saul, showing how we should understand these apply to Jesus in the New Testament. They're not titles of godship, they're titles of kingship. Regarding Jesus is a more a truer identification of Jesus. That he is the Davidic king. He is the Israelite king of Bible prophecy. Therefore, that's why he's called anointed Christ. That's why he's called Lord. The kings were often referred to as my Lord the King. David called Saul that. David was called that. Solomon was called that, my Lord the King, the anointed. And what's interesting also in this passage is not only does David refer to Saul as my Lord the King and Jehovah's anointed, all things Lord, but he also calls Saul father. He also calls Saul father. Now, the reason why I mention that, because the oneness people, the modalist people, will say that Jesus is God the Father. Jesus and the Father are the same person. And they come up with all kinds of weird explanations for how he was the Son on earth, but he was the Father in heaven when Jesus was on the earth. It's just bizarre. But again, they get that from Isaiah 9:6. It'll be called Everlasting Father. Well, Saul's called Father by David. Why? Because it's a title of the governor and or king of Israel in rank. Again, it's why I say that a lot of the gems of the Bible are in the Old Testament. And especially, you go to the Kings, the book of the Kings 1 and 2, the book of the Chronicles 1 and 2, Samuel 1 and 2. That's where a lot of your, because, when a lot of the Old Testament stuff that's popular, like your Isaiahs, your prophet books like Joel, Jeremiah, but you go into these Chronicles and Kings and Samuel passages, and you get a lot of gems. So again, even the title of Jesus in Isaiah 9:6 is respect to his kingship, not him being God the Father. The Old Testament tells us who Jesus is. He's the Lord. He's the Christ. He's in the kingship of Israel. So when we read those statements about Jesus in the New Testament, don't read into it what's not there. Don't read into it which was not prophesied by the prophets, because now you're guilty of private interpretation. 2 Peter chapter 1. Peter says, prophecy doesn't come by private interpretation, but by holy men that spoke, being moved by the Holy Ghost. So what were the prophets saying? What do these things teach us about who Jesus would be? The Lord, the Christ, the King. Rooted in what? Not the idea of a triune God, but the idea of the kingship of Israel, funneled through the Davidic everlasting covenant. Gave him obeisance, worship. The very things Solomon was given by Israel at his coronation in 1 Chronicles 29, verse 20. What did the apostles do? They gave obeisance to Jesus. They gave obeisance to Jesus, because why? He's the Son of God, the King. They worshipped him. Heaven, the angels worshipped him when he ascended into heaven to receive the throne of David and Revelation 5. And really, what my goal is for myself and for others that would listen is to get back to a simpler kingdom Christianity that has a simpler and kingdom Jesus in it. That's it. Because if you look at the Christian world with all the denominations, even the so-called apostolic churches, you want to look at that and you see the confusion. You see the utter confusion in doctrine and practice by all these churches. Greek Orthodox, Catholic, the various evangelical Protestant churches. And how we get to a simpler Christianity is having a simpler Jesus that's rooted in the law and the prophets. Because everybody's looking for Jesus in the Old Testament in all the wrong places. Always the angel of Jehovah, always Jehovah God himself. He's Michael the Archangel. That's what they say. But the real Jesus of the Bible is given to us in these passages. Kings, the Chronicles, the Samuels of the world, the Psalms. He is found in the Old Testament, but as a type. And that type is namely King David. Other Davidic kings, not in Jehovah God himself, but in the kings. Anyways, with that being said, blessings in the Son of God, Jesus Christ, our now reigning Davidic King. Hail Christ, hail victory.